All right. Seeing that we do have quorum present, may I please ask Mrs. Shipp for a roll call for attendance, please?
Board Member De La Rosa? Board Member Ovalle?
Here.
Board Member Edmiston?
Here.
President Trujillo?
Present. And with quorum present, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 5:27 p.m. I'll begin with our tribal land acknowledgement. In partnership with the tribes who called Phoenix their home first, we acknowledge and respect the land our schools are built on. We commit to being a strong partner with any and all tribal nations who entrust their children to our schools. We are grateful and honored to be partners. If you'd like to, please stand to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to item A3, adoption of our agenda. Dr. Gonzalez, do you have a recommendation for our agenda this evening?
Madam President, I do have a recommendation. I would recommend that we move item E2, receive and discuss the presentation on the fiscal year 25 PESD #1 annual financial report, to item G2 and have it be to receive and take possible action on the presentation of the FY25 PESD #1 annual financial report.
Thank you for that. I'd like to move that we approve the agenda as amended, as Dr. Gonzalez mentioned, moving item B2 to item G2. Do we have a second?
This is Erica, and I second.
Board Member Ovalle?
Aye.
Board Member Edmiston?
Aye.
President Trujillo?
Aye. With that, our motion passes and our agenda is adopted. Moving on, we will go to our current event summary, item B1. Dr. Gonzalez, the floor is yours.
Madam President, members of the board, our cabinet members, audience, and our viewing community, I'm pleased to welcome you all this evening as we continue to review our student outcomes, seeing the progress that we're making in establishing a healthy fiscal management practice and celebrating the terrific partnerships that are supporting our work. And speaking of partnerships, I'm really excited about the night we had last night at the Musical Instrument Museum. We had outstanding student performances from students at Herrera, Edison, Whittier, and Garfield. We were pleased to host nearly 500 Phoenix #1 students, staff, and families. The museum staff absolutely loved our students and our families, and we cannot wait to have another night to celebrate together. I've also been meeting out in our communities, meeting with community members at a variety of different community events the past couple of months, and want to extend a heartfelt thank you, excuse me, to the various groups who've welcomed us and have been willing to share their thoughts and insights with us. You'll see later on when we look at Superintendent Guardrail #2, some of the recommendations that are coming out of these forums. But for those of you who have not yet had an opportunity to join, we are extending more opportunities throughout the next month as well. We have business partner luncheons, social gatherings, cafecitos, PTO meetings, and I appreciate everyone's willingness to share their ideas with us so that we can learn and grow together. The input from our community is critical to helping us ensure that we are providing the very best for our children, staff, and families. And speaking of staff who make sure our children are getting the very best, today is also School Custodians Day. And we were able to celebrate our custodians with cards and gift baskets going to the different school sites and surprising them with a little gift. And we know that many of our schools have also done special things to thank our school custodians. October is also School Leaders Month, and I want to say I'm so proud of the work that we're doing collectively to improve student outcomes, to be wise stewards of our taxpayers' dollars, and to create district environments that are welcoming and safe for everyone. Our school leaders are integral to making sure that we're able to do that every day. And I just want to express a heartfelt thank you to every one of the leaders who's come to our district to work and serve our families, to serve our students, and to serve our communities in all of the ways that we're working toward. We can't do this work without phenomenal leaders, and I'm very proud of every one of our school leaders. With that, Madam President, that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Do we have any other board member reports? Oh, yeah, okay. I do have a few, as Dr. Gonzalez mentioned, that it is School Leaders Month, but I had written down National Principals Month. So definitely wanted to thank all of our wonderful principals who choose to lead our schools. I salute you and I'm grateful for all the work you do in service of our students and to the community. I'd like to echo your comments about the event last night and thank Mrs. Sims and our district staff for creating the opportunity to accept an invite to the Musical Instrument Museum, along with a lot of parents and students. It was a magical night of new experiences for me to actually go to the MIM and participate in some of the what do they have? Like exhibits, I guess I'll call them. It was an absolute pleasure to watch our students perform as well, having the music teachers out there leading and the kids and seeing the buses outside it always just touches my heart. So thank you very much for making that possible. Lastly, we have an all-male election upon us, and the district has 3 ballot measures on this November's election. So I'd like to share that the last day to register to vote is October 6th, and mail-in ballots are scheduled to go out on October the 8th. With that said, we can move on to our next agenda item, C1, our community communications. This is a time for the public to comment. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically on the agenda. Therefore, actions taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, respond to criticism, or rescheduling for a further consideration at a later date. We'll keep it at the normal, I'm sorry, how many electronic comments do we have?
We have 2.
Perfect. We'll keep it at the 3-minute mark. Do you have a timer Perfect. With that, we'll begin with our in-person comments. May we please welcome Allison Gullick to the front. Thank you for being here.
Oh, hi, I'm Allison Gullick, parent in the district. So I just want to share little things. Our district is at a breaking point right now. The enrollment numbers are in from Heard and Dunbar being closed, and they're staggering. At the last 40-day count, we lost over 10% of our enrollment from last year. That loss is not just numbers on a page. It's families leaving, walking away, and children leaving our classrooms and community losing trust in this district. Year after year, we repeat the same cycles of divestment, threatening closures and excuses for why we have to close schools and divest in our communities. But our students cannot wait any longer. Our youngest learners were infants during the pandemic. COVID is no longer an excuse for these struggles. Something deeper is broken and we must fix it. We are closing schools and ending preschool programs to the point of making programs unattainable to the average person. Outside of Shaw, we only have maybe 7 or 8 full-day preschoolers across the entire district. That is unacceptable. Our own guardrails show major academic concerns too. There is absolutely no reason that any school in this district should be at 0% proficiency in any subject. Consolidating resources into a few schools has not solved this problem. It's only made it worse. This district has a long, long history of causing irreparable harm. It has a history of Indian schools, segregation, resistance to desegregation orders, and now wave after wave of school closure, particularly in areas that serve our most vulnerable and most in need. Each time neighborhoods are weakened, families are displaced, and our most vulnerable learners are the ones who suffer. These cycles must end, and they must end now. Enough is enough. We cannot keep prioritizing construction company contracts, kickbacks, poor lease deals, and deals that benefit others while draining resources from our classrooms and from our educators. All of this is a well-known problem in Arizona. We are Arizona's first public school district. We should be the champions of public education, breaking these cycles and not being a stain and a laughingstock in the news for failed leadership or being the dumpster fire. as we slowly watch public education whittle away. And yet, despite all of this, our teachers, our principals, and our staff continue to shine. My child has been lucky to learn from incredible educators during his 3 years in this district. I've been very happy with his progress, and I love every teacher and principal that he's ever had, especially at Kenilworth. Their dedication and proof is that we still have the foundation to turn this ship around if we choose to invest in them and our students and stop trying to right size or use buzzwords such as declining birth rates or to scare people when the reality is actually much different. We are here for one reason: the children and the educators who serve them. Closing schools and taking away resources from those who need it most and funneling them to those who already benefit from those resources is not equity, it's deepening inequities. Please take this to heart and think about the direction you want things to be and the legacy that you want to leave this district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Ship, whenever you're ready to proceed with electronic comments, we are ready as well.
Our first comment is from Paul Booth. Governing Board, I noticed the lease topic on the agenda, and I want to stress just how critical this issue is for our district's future. Lease agreements are one of the most powerful tools we have, not just to generate much-needed revenue, but to ensure our properties are being used in ways that truly benefit the community. Unfortunately, our past experiences show we haven't always managed this well. When Hurd and Dunbar were closed, we were told that leasing those properties would help offset program costs. Yet those cuts still happened. Today, Dunbar sits vacant. Hurd is only partially used. Meanwhile, we've heard claims that the Fillmore property could bring in millions in annual lease revenue. But if the tenant is a school, how exactly does that solve our maintenance and operations funding crisis? Now the district is asking voters for permission to sell or lease virtually every property we own. And I have real concerns, especially given our track record with prior lease agreements. For example, the recent presentation shared price per square foot, but it didn't tell us key information. What is the actual rent being paid? Are utilities included? Who's responsible for maintenance or security? We know terms vary. ASU Prep's lease isn't the same as Beyond Autism's. Monterey Park's revenue stream needs far more transparency as well. We need a better process. We need all properties clearly listed. We need competitive bids. We need to negotiate strong, smart deals, and we need real transparency at every stage. Leasing to schools can help generate revenue we can use for M&O, but we must balance that with the risk of losing student enrollment. That trade-off needs to be considered carefully. And above all, we need the community involved. If the public doesn't trust how these properties are being handled, we risk losing their support on future bond measures and overrides. And that's a risk we simply can't afford. I urge the district to take this seriously. These decisions are not just being about property. They're about the future of our schools, our programs, and our ability to serve students during incredibly difficult times. Thank you, Paul Booth. Our last comment is from April Pettit. Good evening, members of the board. My name is April Pettit, and I serve as the president of PECTA. I want to invite anyone who would like to join us for a canvass in support of the Phoenix Elementary School District No. 1 override. We will meet at the Arizona Education Association, which is 345 East Palm Lane, on Saturday, October 4th at 9:30 a.m. This override is not a tax increase. It is the funding that protects the very things that make our district strong. Without it, we could lose competitive salaries for teachers and staff, which we depend on to recruit and keep high-quality educators, arts and music programs, which give students creativity, joy, and balance in their school day, evidenced by last night's amazing student performances at the MIM. Student support services like counseling, nursing, and interventions that keep kids healthy and safe. Classroom supplies and curriculum resources which directly impact daily learning. Manageable class sizes which allow teachers to give students the attention they deserve. Safe and up-to-date facilities and technology which are critical for both learning and staff working conditions. On top of this, our district is facing declining enrollment. That means we need to use the override not just to maintain what we have, but to also build and expand programs that attract families and staff to Phoenix No. 1. If we don't, we risk losing even more students, which creates a cycle of shrinking resources and opportunities. Strong schools are the heart of a strong community. This override ensures we can continue to provide the kind of education that brings families into our district and keeps great teachers in our classrooms. If anyone has questions, please email pectavicepresident@gmail.com or pectatreasurer@gmail.com. And if you can't make it this Saturday, we will have additional opportunities to get involved throughout October. Thank you. This concludes our comments.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ship. With that, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Our items D1 through items D13. I move that we approve our consent agenda as presented. Do we have a second?
This is Erica and I second.
Board Member Ovalle,
Aye.
Board Member Edmiston,
Aye.
President Trujillo.
Aye. With that, our consent agenda passes and we will move on to item E1. We'll receive our presentation on the sale lease exchange of district real property. Welcome, Mrs. Sims.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, my fellow cabinet members in the community. My name is Sarah Sims. I'm the Executive Director of Strategic Initiatives, and I'm here tonight at the request of the board to provide more information about the voter proposition on the November ballot in regard to sale, lease, or exchange of district real estate. If you would, Randy, what does voter approval allow the district permission to do? I just wanted to briefly go over what permission on the ballot initiative would allow us to do. Number one, it would allow us to enter into long-term leases. Those are leases that are of 21 to 99 years of usable school property, allowing the district to responsibly manage its property to generate revenue that can be reinvested directly into student learning. What I want the board to remember about this first item is that lease funding allows for flexible spending. It's much more flexible than sale. Item 2, this ballot proposition would allow us the permission to sell property. Proceeds must go towards bond debt repayment and investment into buildings. This is restricted usage of the funds, and at this time, we have no intent to sell any of the properties that are listed. The third permission would be for us to exchange property for other real estate. It's very uncommon, but sometimes it is helpful to just districts if they own a piece of property and they want to exchange that one with someone else for another parcel of property. What can lease revenue be used for? This is important for us to remember. If approved, the district could use the money from leases to construct or improve buildings or classrooms, purchase school buses or other vehicles, or cover any other district expenses, including upgrading safety infrastructure, programming needs, or necessary staff. And some examples of that might be offsetting preschool costs or after-school enrichment and sports. In this chart, I will allow you to read most of that on your own, but I do want to point out to you that on the left, you will see our leased properties. In the middle, you'll see the lessee, who is the person leasing, the square footage with which they are obligated, and the percent of the building that they've leased. Price per square foot is approximate. These are not exact numbers, but they are very, very telling when you look at the chart. I do want to point out that Booker T. Washington, the Fillmore property, and Monterey Park are voter-approved long-term lease properties. Those are already allowed for 21 to 99-year leases. Hurd School is not. That is only allowable up to that 20-year lease mark. Utilities at the top 3 are paid by the lessee, and at the bottom, Monterey Park, the district is paying those utilities. Oh, yes, thank you. I almost missed that. The bottom line, if you would go back for me, Randy, I apologize. Thank you. Monterey Park, super important. The asterisk on that line, the $15.54 per square foot is an in-kind. Those are services that are provided to families and the district. So that is in-kind services. Thank you very much. And examples of those would be discounted childcare for employees, the half-day preschool program that Monterey Park allows for our preschoolers to access. No other programs, daycare programs allow for that half day. It's a huge service that we were lacking in the district, and so Monterey Park Y Academy makes that up for us. They're also offering all children that are in after-school programming free water safety, free swim lessons right now. So perks like that are the in-kind services that we use to calculate that. Thank you. And then if you go to the last slide, you'll see total revenue generated from current leases. The amount at the top is just our long-term leases that you see in the chart. We have a variety of other short-term lease revenue, things like cell towers or the governing board room usage or things like that, where we have additional income coming in. But just from our real estate leases, we're bringing in about $1.1 million a year. And our plans for those funds are listed below. We know that we're going to need to supplement preschool until we can get our enrollment up there. We want to provide sports not only for our middle schoolers, we'd love to extend that from our pre-K through 5. That's going to take some funds. We heard from the community that they really feel strongly about district field experiences, and one of the most expensive parts of field experiences is the transport. So if we're not able to meet that transportation need in district, we would love to provide contracted transportation. If that's the only barrier to a field, we don't want that to happen. So we would supplement there. The board is aware that we've lost some of our federal funding for our family and community engagement specialists. That's what FACE stands for. We plan to use some of our flexible lease revenues to allow for them to have training and reimbursement for their time off the clock for Parent Education Academy. We have a very robust teacher mentoring program in the summer to welcome new teachers to the fold, and with that comes a cost. And so our flexible lease funds allow for us to do that. You know that we are very ambitious about new programming and offering programming that is important to families and that will draw enrollment to the district. For example, our DLI program. New programs take money to get off the ground, and so we have allotted $250,000 into new programming for students. And then the last line here is ANOT development. And so we have allotted that. We understand fully that these do not add up to 1.1. We're trying to build a reserve. So for those of you who are calculating, we understand those don't add up to the 1.1, but we are trying to build a reserve. So I thank you very much for your time this evening. Were you raising your hand with a question? President Trujillo, please.
Thank you, thank
Of
you.
course.
Did I hear you say DOI?
DLI,
DL.
Dual Language Immersion, which is housed at Lowell.
Perfect.
And it is busting at the seams. We are so pleased. Both classrooms are full.
Wonderful.
Yes.
So startup cost for that, is that something,
So startup costs are things that we're not able to pay out of our regular maintenance and operations, or things that we'd like to supplement. Advertising, any kind of modifications to the building or things that we need to do like that, supplies, transportation, hosting families, making sure that the face is available there if we need to pay extra hours, if we have an open house, some of those kinds of things where we've lost some of that federal funding that would have offset those costs.
thank you
And-
very much for clearing that up for me.
And curriculum and training for teachers if it's a new program.
May I ask for clarification, how many properties we already have approval for?
We have approval for the items that are on the list minus Hurd, plus and Ott,
Okay,
and plant services.
On the ballot initiative, which schools are going to be?
Every school site. Every other school site. That was the wishes of the board. Yep.
I do
And
remember.
Emerson Court.
So okay, I have a clarifying question too. So just to clarify, when you're talking about the leases for these various lessees, the rent and the in-kind services, is that all clearly spelled out in each one of the leases, what they pay?
Yes, very clearly spelled out. So I can give you an example at Hurd if you'd like. Would that be helpful? So our lessee Beyond Autism pays a base rate for the real estate, if you will, the use of the actual square footage. And then they also pay a dollar amount for custodial and grounds and utilities. So it's all very clearly spelled out. It wouldn't be fair for us to ask the lessee at Hurd to pay the entire utility bill. They're not using the entire campus. So they're paying utilities specifically on the square footage that they're accessing in their lease. And that's all spelled out in a lease that goes through legal and comes back and is approved. And in fact, they just added square footage this week. They added one more classroom. So we had to amend the lease, and with that, then they're paying the additional custodial, utilities, and grounds per square foot. And all of the leases are reviewed by our legal counsel.
I've got a question. So
Sure.
if all the schools are on the ballot, I wasn't here the day they made that vote, but I did hear about it. Does that mean at any time we can we can close those schools and put them up for a lease? Is
So
is this a pathway to school
That's a
closures?
great question. No, there are clear legal parameters for what it takes to close a school. What this proposition would allow for us to do is enter into long-term leases. If you look at item number 1 on slide 2, leases 21 to 99 years in length. What's important about that as we look forward with these properties is if someone's going to develop something, a youth center or housing or whatever, it's very hard to secure housing for a short-term lease. No one's going to finance you if you only have a lease for 4 years. So what a long-term lease allows them to do is to secure financing. So that opens every single property that we have the ability for a long-term lease. That's really what we're going for on this proposition. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I thank you for that. It's just my concern is like, we know the board, or I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but like right now, we don't want to close schools, but in the future, that very much could change. That power is going to be handed down to different boards who later on can change the vision, the mission, and the values. And so that concerns me, just to be completely transparent, that it might not be the pathway now, but it could be a pathway in the future. So I'm just,
I thank you for that question. I think it's important to review what's required for a school closure. There's a public meeting, there has to be a public notification, and then we have to follow gathering community comment in order to do a school closure. Having an agreement like this by the voters has absolutely nothing to do with school closure. It's accessing the land or the building for either sell, lease, or exchange. To close a school would be a completely different legal process, and that's not on the ballot. Thank you for the question. That's important.
I agree, because you can, if you don't know how the process works, it can still raise concerns. So I agree. I'm grateful for the extra clarification. I would like to ask for some long-term lease examples, like nothing, of course, I don't know, I don't want to screw anything up if we've got, ideas, but what can we
Absolutely.
look
So
forward to, I guess?
a long-term lease, a perfect example would be the New Times building. That's a long-term lease. And so they took occupancy of the building. A lease was written with an escalator, which just means that every so many years, they're going to look at the consumer price index and they're going to determine what the legal rate of increase on that lease would be. And so the New Times is a perfect example. If we have a building that a business wants to lease for a longer period of time, it allows them to do so. That would be one option. The other option I touched on briefly would be something like if you wanted to develop some type of housing, affordable or attainable housing, or some type of a community center or something like that. Securing funding would be very hard if the lessee was not able to secure a long-term land lease. It may not even be leasing the current building that's there. It may only be leasing the land. And this ballot proposition would allow for them to lease land to build. So those are some of the examples I can think of. Does that answer your question?
It does pull some ideas together. So for work, I had to go on to one of the Balts campuses and they have like a
Exactly.
wellness
Mm-hmm.
center area. So I'm assuming that might be like a long-term lease thing that they've got going with the a wellness group. I can't remember the name of it, but
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're-
inside of there were different like spaces and we used them to talk to parents, but I think like so they just had different companies inside. So that
Mhm.
kind of
Exactly. Any kind of real estate where where you can develop and you can, braid funding, bring in funding from multiple sources that the school district may not be able to access, but the developer could. So, housing is near and dear to us. We want to find ways for families to live in the district. So, with a proposition like this would allow the land that we have to be developed by someone who does that professionally and knows about those funding sources. We literally own the land and we're leasing it to them to develop with a mutual cause that you all would have to approve prior to doing that.
got it. May I ask for a little more info on the Consumer Price Index review?
You may. I am not an expert, but our
Just
realty
a
team
little,
would be
so I
happy
fully,
to do
I
that.
can understand it a little more.
Yeah, every so many years it's reviewed and they look at the consumer price index, the rate of inflation against market rate rent, and then it's built into your lease at the inception. So that every so many years you run the risk of your rent being increased with whatever that rate was. It was quite healthy the last time it was reviewed, which I believe was in March. And so then our lease with the New Times was adjusted in April to reflect that new consumer price index, and it was a significant increase for us.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions?
So one other question, thank you for this chart because it's really helpful to understand the current situation. And when I look at it, like two things right away stuck out to me. The first is, to the degree that they're all paying rent, some rent, they are providing the service, which is in this as well, as far as being able to reinvest that in educational purposes. But I think what I'm hearing from people, and actually I think it's in our documents too, that when community members are polled, they're citing at their top, and we're going to talk about this later, but engaging programs, knowledgeable, caring teachers, academic excellence, positive school culture, is that people really seem to be asking for educational enrichment programs, education-focused uses. And so, personally, that's really what I would like to see. And I'm interested to know, because also when I look at this list, I don't see that being equal as far as the educational value, as far as what they are contributing directly. And how is that weighed in this process,
Thank
like
you.
looking at what the needs are and if this potential lessee can provide something that's needed.
You teed me up perfectly. I'll take that one. Dunbar. We have a review committee at Dunbar. And when anyone contacts me and says, I'm really interested, I'd like to lease space, I get a ton of these calls every week. It's amazing to me how many people are reaching out to us about space. So I put together a list of items that we need from anyone who's interested. And there's a review committee that's been gathered. And there are community members, there are staff, myself, procurement department, and we review those. And the list of items that we ask for is, what do you know about our community? How are you going to benefit our community? How can our students access whatever it is that you want to do with the property? And how will this help us with our mission? And here is our mission. And you can see that clearly on our website and all of our items. And so the review committee takes that into consideration. And we've had a lot who have said, well, I'd like to use the property for free, which we can't do because that's a gift of public funds. Absolutely nothing that they wanted to do in that building was going to benefit our students or our staff. And so we said, we're not able to do that. But the review committee is asking those exact questions. How are you going to give back to the community? What's your history in the community and what are you going to give back? And we are taking a really serious look at those when we get those applicants. I say applicants, but they're really inquiries.
Just one follow-up on that.
Yes.
Giving back to the community in an educational sense that
Yes.
directly will benefit the students of this district.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Is it programming? Is it supports? Is it benefits for teachers? We're looking at all of that. And not every lessee can check all of those boxes, but we are trying to find some that meet we really have big dreams for programming. And if we can find partners that can help us do that, those would be our priority.
Thank you.
Educational programming. You're welcome. Sure.
Hearing no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sims. You're good, Dr. G? All right, with that, we can move on to item E2, adjourning to our executive session. I move that we adjourn to executive session at 6:02 PM. Do we have a second?
This is Erica and I second.
Thank you. May we please have a vote, Mrs. Ship?
Board Member Ovalle,
Aye.
Board Member Epperson,
Aye.
President Trujillo.
Aye. With that, we will move on to, we will adjourn into executive session for the purpose of receiving and discussing legal advice from our attorney for the public body regarding the board's options with respect to the superintendent's performance-based compensation pay plan for the 25-26 school year. We should be back within an hour. See you guys soon. Thank you. I think I'm gonna switch it up here and say, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. With that, our motion passes. Or I guess I'll give the option. All opposed, say nay or no. Hearing none, our motion passes and we will move on to item G2, which is our receive, discuss, and possibly take action on the presentation of our fiscal year 2025 for our annual financial report. So welcome, Mr. Whittle. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Dr. Gonzalez, fellow cabinet members, thank you for allowing me to speak here tonight on behalf of the fiscal year 25 Phoenix Elementary School District #1 Annual Financial Report. So when we are preparing the AFR, we have to understand what is the AFR. So the AFR is called the Annual Financial Report. It is required by statute 19-904 that must be presented and approved every year. And it is basically the expenses of goods, services that are received during the fiscal year, which our fiscal year is July 1 to June 30th. It represents the M&O, the capital fund, our grants, and our special revenue funds, which is mainly our cash accounts. It also represents our district revenues and all of our total expenditures in all funds. It also encompasses the food service annual financial report and our school level AFR, as well as our classroom site fund annual financial report that is due by November 15th. So how do we prepare for the AFR? AFR, we verify through our accounting software, Infinite Visions, and making sure that the records meet the USFR compliance questionnaire. USFR stands for Uniform Standards of Financial Records. It's everything. It's basically every school uses the USFR to meet compliance from the state of Arizona. We also verify cash controlled funds and state aid through the Maricopa Superintendent's Office, Maricopa County Superintendent's Office. Then we file our ADE completion reports for federal and state grants. Federal grants are due September 30th and state grants are due by June 30th. We also test for our exceptional student services maintenance of effort. How we do this is by prior year exceptional student services expenses over the current year expenditures. And districts must ensure that combined fiscal effort on a per student or aggregate basis is not less than 10% of the preceding fiscal year. So what we spent on our ESS population must meet what we spent on the prior year, no more than 10%. So again, what else are we looking for? We're looking for to make sure that we're verifying financial details within our general ledger. We're reconciling our M&O revenues. We're reconciling our M&O expenditures by program, function, and object. We're reconciling our Prop 301, which is also our classroom site fund, through revenues and expenditures. Our capital expenditures are grant, state, and federal, both revenue and also expenditures. And also our special revenue fund, revenue and expenditures, making sure that all of the expenditures meet compliance within the USFR for our state funds and also through our EDGAR for compliance through EDGAR for our federal funds. So we actually have two law books that we have to follow, USFR for the state of Arizona and EDGAR for federal. So as we get into the M&O, I want to break it down by the function type. So the AFR is mainly about those three funds, mainly about the M&O fund, the capital fund. It also goes over bonds, but mainly M&O and capital are the two major funds that we really want to focus on here in the AFR. So as you can see through our M&O functions, we spend about 50% of our M&O. We spent about 54 total, almost 55 total $1 million in our M&O fund. 50% of that is going directly to the kids through instruction. 12 and 8% are going to instructional support. The instructional support students, these are like our psychologists. These are our nurses. They're also our attendance clerks. So whenever when students are absent, we're calling the kids to make sure that they're in school. Our instructional support, this is our curriculum department that directly supports our teachers to make sure that they have the resources needed to educate our students. So total on our M&O account, 70% is going directly to the students. We have 3% in our general administration. Principals consume about 5%, central services, 5%, plant services, this is our maintenance department, 11%, transportation, 5%, and nutrition services, 1%. Now, through our nutrition services, we do have what's called a match, a food service match, where because food service is a federally funded program, we have to spend a certain amount of money from our M&O account on food service. That's why it's the 1%. It's not going to consume very much. So this is our M&O expenditures by function. This is our M&O expenditures by category. Category is our salaries and benefits, is going to eat up most of our M&O expenditures. You can see there's 66% of our $54 million budget, or sorry, $54 million expenditures are coming directly from salaries and benefits. Sorry, 66 for salaries, 22% for benefits. So 88% of our M&O budget is coming directly to salaries and benefits. Now, the goal for this is to get this around 75 to 80%. Purchase services, about 7%. Purchase property services, about 1%. Other purchase services, about 2%. Supplies, about 2%. And dues, just under 0%, so about 0.7%. Our purchase service professional, that is directly tied to, could be our substitutes, where we're hiring a vendor to come in and satisfy a need of the district. Purchase property services, this is our utilities, like our trash, our water, our sewers. Other purchase services, this could be other items that aren't identified through either the purchase professional services or the purchase property services. And then about 2% in supplies, this is going to be mainly our fuel for our transportation department. So when we look at the expenditures, we can break it down by fund. So our maintenance and operations, let me go back here. I want to pull this out bottom right. So our fiscal year 25 budget was 56.157 million. And we had fiscal year 25 expenditures of 54.84 million, which left us with a budget balance carry forward of 1.3 million. When I presented the proposed and adopted budget back in June, I projected we would have a budget balance carry forward of about $1 million. So our accounting records were pretty right on. We're about 300,000 off, but I'd rather go up than go down. So that just goes to show you that we are on track with our accounting records. So our expenditures by fund, our maintenance and operation, as you saw, we spent 54.84 million. Our capital outlay, this is our 610. It's also called the district additional assistance, the unrestricted capital outlay, and also the capital. So it has three names. 2.7 million, our classroom site fund, 5 million. Our grants, so grants are any funds that start with a 100 through 499. We spent 21.6 million. I do have an asterisk on this one because I want to identify that this does include 8.1 million in ESSER 3 funding. So I want to bring that to the board's attention. ESSER 3 funding is no longer available through the district. So next year we're not going to see, or that column will not be 21 million. It's more likely going to be around 12 or 13 million. Now, also with the reduction in our federal funding, we might even see that a lot less. So I want to bring that to the board's attention. Our special revenue accounts, these are our cash accounts, about 12.7 million. And then our bond, we spent 11 million. So the total taken from, or the total expenditures for the district, 107, almost $108 million for fiscal year 25. Again, this is from July 1, 2024 to June 30th of 2025. I want to thank you, and we'll take any questions.
I think if we could just kind of have a moment to look through a few things. that would be helpful in case any questions come to mind.
Absolutely.
I have a quick question on the expenses for the special revenue cash accounts. What does that mean exactly?
So special revenue cash accounts, this is going to be mostly our indirect costs, all of our 500 funds, which are cash controlled. Another special revenue is our food service account that is eating up most of this expenditures is food service, I believe, had about 5.7 million in expenditures. And the other ones are going to be our, when we do lease our properties, we get that revenue in, that's going to be in these accounts.
Got a quick question. You mentioned that you presented a budget already earlier this year. So I just kind of wondered if any differences between that budget and this one that it might be off the top of your head that you could share with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question.
Thank you.
So there is two. We present the budget and then we have the annual financial report. So the budget, we talk about what the district, where we think we're going to spend the money. And we're able to generate what is our GBL or our general budget limit. And then we create the budget based off of the needs of the district. So our budget this year was 56.1 56.157 million. That's what we approved at the May revision budget. So the budget is our projections. Where do we think we're going to be? The annual financial report is actually showing where did we spend our money. So the budget, this is where we think we're going to spend it. And the annual financial report, where did we actually spend the money?
And the budget that we got in May, or that we approved the last time this was presented, that was like a revised budget that we had a presentation on prior to that before, I'm assuming?
Yeah, absolutely. So the budget is a moving target. Every single year it's a moving target. As we know, enrollment, it's a roller coaster. It goes up and down all year. So when we're presenting the proposed and adopted budget, and we have to have the adopted budget presented to the board and submitted no later than July 15th. Well, school doesn't start until the end of July. So we're taking projections of historical data and we're building this budget. And then when in December, statute allows us to revise a budget. If we budgeted way down, or if we budgeted way too high, we can bring it down. So in December, we're able to do a revision based on our because we do current year funding, we're able to take it to the board and revise either up or down. Right now, I think our current year budget, as I mentioned, I projected $1 million budget balance carry forward, and we saw it's 1.3 million. So actually, when we do a revision, we're going to increase our budget balance carry forward by $300,000. So that's why we would do a revision, is because we're going to increase our budget based on our projections.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of talk about the process a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Regarding the bigger one, this one, is there like a top line on here that show the top, like all of the expenses together and, oh yeah, total spending? Is that on this one?
Yes, it has all their expenditures by fund. That one is very detailed.
Okay, but it's by fund. It's not, it
No.
doesn't show everything all together.
Yeah, the slide that we showed, the 107,000, we took and condensed that in for the board. So we took all those funds. There is about 150 different funds in Arizona. We broke it down by the categories, the M&O, the capital, classroom site fund, and then the grants, and then also the special revenue funds. And we broke them down for you to show the board, this is the 107,000 was all in there.
And just a clarifying point on that. So, when when you have the total funds, all the funds all together and the expense minus the expenses, is there a number associated with that that's reflected here?
What do you mean?
Like income minus expenses, and if that's a positive or a negative number?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I can get you all those funds added up and show it to you, but
Okay.
it is in there detailed. I believe it's on page 7 or 8, where it has federal funds on the top, and those are any funds with a 100 through 399. And then right below it is a section for state grants, which starts with a 400, and it shows you the beginning balance, shows you the revenue, shows you the expenditure, and then it shows you the ending balance. Now, what we get audited off of is the ending balance based on these numbers that we present to the governing board and also send to the Arizona Department of Education.
Thank you.
It's a lot of numbers on there. So this year, they actually did include the food service AFR. You guys will see that in your packet. The food service AFR was always separate of the annual financial report. This year, they actually include it in the annual financial report document. So in the past, we always had to do two. We had to do a annual financial report, and then we had to do a separate food service annual financial report. This year was a little bit easier, where they the Arizona Auditor General's office put it all into one package.
So did I hear that correctly, that we'll probably get the numbers that she was asking for, like in a board update or something like that?
Yeah.
Or maybe you could
Yeah,
schedule
absolutely.
time
We
to,
can get the all the numbers in a board update. That's correct.
awesome.
Yeah, we'll do, how would you like that, board member Edmondson? Would you like it just a column of beginning balances, revenues, and then expenditures, and then ending balance?
I think it would be most helpful if it's possible, to reflect the total revenues, what that number looks like, and the total expenses, what that number looks like, and where the current level is at, if that makes sense. So, revenues minus expenses, then that.
With the beginning balance strategy, beginning balance plus your revenues minus your expenditures equals your ending balance.
Yeah.
Okay.
I appreciate how fast your brain breaks down what those numbers are going to look like. And great question. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to either hearing about that or receiving it. If it's in a board update or if you two talk about it and it's shared afterwards. I
Yeah,
don't have any
and-
further questions.
Board member Edmondson, to come to your point, you bring up a really good point. The key when we're going through the audit is making sure that our June 30th balances with the county match our accounting records. That's a huge audit. And this year, and can't speak on past years, but this year, that is one thing that we've focused on heavily, and our ending balances do match our general ledger. So very proud about that with our team.
Any further questions? Do we want to take some more time with this, or are we ready to move on?
Point of inquiry. I I'm not sure if this is the right time to ask this, but when we vote on this, are we voting to the accuracy of the report?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, integrity is definitely huge.
Okay, and okay, how many, just because I don't know, who all has reviewed this? How many people for the actual accuracy of the document, that all the numbers add up and?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had about 3 people review it in our department. I am the final approver. So it goes through our budget team, then it goes to our director of finance, then it comes to me. I do believe our director of finance did have a consultant help on our cash balances. So it has gone through several eyes,
Thank you.
and we shared it with cabinet as well.
And just for my own sanity, the one that we are gonna sign and the one we have presented and given to us, I kind of go through each page, like they're all the same things or not two different documents, and all of everything else kind of matches on top, so it's,
Yeah, absolutely. So the blue folder, that is a personal, I like to keep, and if you can definitely look through, it has our proposed budget from 25, it has our adopted budget from 25, and then it also has our revision from 25. I do like to keep them together so that we can always reference where were we at the adopted, at the proposed, at the revised, and then also the final, which is the AFR. So do you want to mention this as well? This gets audited. We are about 75% complete with our audit. Once the remaining 25% is going to be dependent really on these documents that really finishes our audit, which our audit is scheduled to finish at the end of this month. So these documents do get audited and to ensure accuracy. And then the audit is presented to the board, and our auditors actually come in and will explain to the board, hey, these are the findings we had. And then the board must accept the audit. So you'll be able to, the auditors, it's total external. They'll come in and say, yes, their cash balances were accurate, or this document was not accurate. Those are the auditors who will come in and do that and present to the board.
yeah, they'll give us a rundown of any findings, compliance issues, corrections, and things like that. Just because you mentioned the audit, and I'm glad you brought it up because it is a huge part of this process. If we're on schedule to finish next month, that sounds early. Are we ahead of the game?
So we are currently way ahead of the game. Last year, if the board remembers, we had the auditors come in May to present, and the audit is due by March 30th. However, because we do take in bond funding, we have to do what's called a ACFR, which is an annual comprehensive financial report. It's basically gives the district our credit score. So when we do go out to sell bonds, we're able to get either a lower interest rate. So our ACFR is actually due by December 30th, and we are well on schedule to finish before then. Hopefully the auditors are here in December to present our audit in December. So.
That's really great news. I'm trying to compose myself. I'm really, really, really excited to hear that. Thank you very much.
And that question about that, that's the normal process. The normal process is to submit it and then they do the audit.
Yeah, because the auditors, they need to see what are we submitting to the county superintendent's office, or what are we submitting to Arizona Department of Education. It's not set in stone until we actually submit it. And it becomes a public document that people can go in and say, hey, what is this? So once we submit it, then the auditors will pull from the Arizona Department of Education's website, or Arizona School Finance, and they'll pull that document and say, okay, this is what you're presenting to the community, to the public. We're going to audit it for accuracy and for integrity. So.
And I want to thank you for every time you do send us an update, you do include all the links for where these numbers come from. where these get submitted to and everything. So I do appreciate it. It can be daunting, but I'm really happy to access it and
Yeah, absolutely.
ask you a million questions. Bless you.
Try to be as transparent as I can.
Are you ready to make a motion to accept?
I was just gonna ask to see if we needed more time or if we were able to move on. Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Whittle. I appreciate your time and all the information. With that, I move that we approve our annual financial report for the 24-25 school year or fiscal year. My apologies. Do we have a second?
This is Erica and I second.
Thank you. With that, is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Hearing none, our motion passes and we will move on to our next item. G3, we'll go over our progress monitoring report for board goal number 2. Dr. Gonzalez, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight, we're going to be looking at 2 of our goals that have been set. Last week, we looked at literacy, or last month, I keep saying, last month, we looked at our literacy goals. This month, we're looking at our mathematics goals. And so goal number 2 that was established by the governing board says that we want to get the percentage of 3rd grade students with a pass rate on math as per the AASA to increase from 29% on the August 2023 AASA to 54% by 2028 on the same measure. So if you look at the next slide, you can see this is our detailed data tracker that's helping us to see where we are with this. We have shown growth, you can see from on this chart from 28, we've gone up to 32, and this is about the kind of growth that you would reasonably expect students to make annually. However, we have a stretch goal of trying to get to 41 by 2026. So when you look at this, the percentage of 3rd grade students with a pass rate on math, we started at 29%, we are up to 32%. And we want to continue to show that growth. On the right-hand side of the chart, you can see the breakdowns for our demographic groups, and we have them broken down by demographic racial aspects, but also federal program or cohorts with federal programs such as Title I, free or reduced lunch, exceptional student services, and our emergent bilingual students. So as we set this goal up, one of the areas that we wanted to make sure that we were focusing in all of the work that we're doing, and you'll hear from Drs. Galetti and Dr. Lloyd, that we are really focusing in the use of vocabulary and scaffolding. And you might be thinking, what? I thought this was a math goal. It is a math goal, but we know how important it is to use mathematical terminology and to help students structure their learning and that they have discourse or conversation with one another about what they're learning in mathematics. This requires a lot of training for teachers who maybe have not had that aspect taught to them in their training programs. We also know that we need to have really purposeful, what we call intervention in tier 2. And what that is, think of tier 1, everyone is getting grade level content. But for some students, we might be struggling a little bit with what is, I don't understand the concept of bringing numbers together. So I might have to have a tier 2 intervention. It means I'm in a smaller group, I'm working with a specialist, or I'm getting additional assistance from my teacher to be able to accelerate my learning. And then the small group instruction is something that we know we can use more purposefully to make sure that every child, regardless of where they are on their grade level content, is getting something that is challenging them and moving them appropriately. So as we look at that, that sets us up to look at the interim goals that we're going to talk about today. The interim goal is goal 2.1. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Lloyd, who's going to talk a little bit more about this.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, members of the board. Thank you for having me again. It's good to see you. So for this goal, we're trying to improve the percentage of our students in first grade at our 2 focus schools of Emerson and Lowell. In the past, in the fall, we've been at 2% of students on grade when they start, and we wouldn't expect many to be on grade, but we are trying to have more be on grade at the start of the year. And that can be early on, right? Like right at the beginning of those skill levels. And then by winter, we're hoping to, well, our goal is to get to more than 19%. This was a 2-year target. And so for this year, we're trying to get to that 20% mark. On average, over the last 3 years, I did some averaging. We had about a 13% increase across the entire district over the last 3 years. So I do think this is within reach for us this year, especially with a strong focus at those schools. The other piece that can either help or hinder is that these are small schools or schools with a small number of students in their grade levels. You'll see overall for the fall, it was only 44 students, so if you divide that in 2, it's really 1 class at each one of those schools that we're talking about, that we're trying to get to help to reach this target. Yeah, and we'll go to the next slide. This slide is showing the breakdown by schools, and now you can see our 2 target schools, or our 2 focus schools, Emerson and Lowell. And Emerson has had improvement from last fall to this fall, fall 24-25 to this fall 25-26, going from 8% to 10%. So we do think they can have, that 15% improvement and meet that target of more than 19%. Lowell, we're not as sure about being able to meet the target, but again, we're aggregating these 2 schools. So we think with the 2 together that we can meet the target. Lowell over the last couple of years has not had a student perform on grade level on this initial diagnostic, and you'll see that trend continue with 2nd grade. So if we can go to the next. So here's 2nd grade now. Again, we're looking at percent of students being on grade level, and this is just for our focus schools. They're still Emerson and Lowell, going from we started at 6% in 23-24 to trying to improve to more than 15% by winter of 25-26. And when I say winter, just to clarify, that will be in December for this math measure. We're going to give that in December. So fall was given mid-August, and we're trying to, by December, have at least 10% more of our students be on grade level. Just to give you an idea again, our trends or patterns over the last 3 years, we've had a 7% increase. But again, with the right focus and support, we believe these schools can have that 10% increase from 6% in the fall to 16% by our winter benchmark. If you can go to the next. You'll see again here, good news is Emerson is improved from the prior year and already has 13% of their students who are on grade level. So we're pretty confident that they're going to have more than 15% by winter. Or we really have to support and provide some additional resources for Lowell to be able to meet that target, to also get to 15% by winter. And if you can go to the next, I'll turn over to Dr. Ailshire and Dr. Galetti.
Thank you, Dr. Lloyd. Madam President, to our esteemed board, cabinet, and colleagues in our community watching, thank you so much for having us to review some of this data. I want to emphasize a couple of key points. When we are looking at this data, our goal to the board is to provide not only an overview of how the schools are doing, but obviously how those focus schools are doing. And as a reminder to the board, those focus schools were chosen for a reason. So Lowell and Emerson were chosen specifically because we know historically those are two campuses that serve communities that struggle in this particular area. So it's not surprising necessarily that Lowell is a school that continues to struggle or that Emerson is a school that continues, because that's why we chose them as focus schools. And the reason why that's really important, is Dr. Lloyd sort of outlined, is we want to be able to see where those schools are struggling the most, what is working well, and then deploy the resources that we need to, going back to our conversation earlier this evening regarding the resources for educational outcomes, to those campuses specifically. So when we talk about what is working and what is not working, this is a really, something that we take very, very seriously. We sat down with Principal Ramos over at Lowell, Principal Gafonia over at Emerson, to really kind of get down to the nitty gritty of what are the things that are working really well, but what are the things that you're struggling with? And so I'm going to outline really briefly for you the sort of the highlights of what is working really well. But that feedback goes directly to our C&I department, because that then shapes our approach to what are the things that we need to be doing for these schools, knowing that if it works for these schools, because these are the schools that are struggling, that those same practices should be able to replicate and focus and support other campuses as well. So upon having these conversations with these leaders, and then also taking the information that we have, our academic leaders and our academic support team spend a lot of time on these campuses, observing their math instruction, observing what's going on in there, to really get a sense of where does the professional needs, where are the resources, and what is working well. When we combining those observational pieces and our conversations with the leaders that are there, monitoring and supporting teachers to consistently use the curricular resources. So this is a really, really important part for us in terms of ensuring consistency. If you have one classroom that is using Teachers Pay Teachers and you have another classroom that is using the district adopted curriculum, you're going to have very different outcomes of what's going on between those two classrooms. So really the first step of making sure that we have a strong taught curriculum is that they are all adhering to a very strong written and assessed curriculum. So we want to make sure that that's something, and that is something that requires a lot of training and focus, and that's something that we believe is doing really well on both of those campuses, and the leaders have identified those as an area of strength. Another one is increasing teacher efficacy, challenging word for staff, with math instruction through coaching and feedback. Dr. Galetti will talk a little bit about how we have sort of revamped the role of what our instructional coaches are doing on those campuses, and the outcomes that we're beginning to see using that revamped role of those instructional coaches in the coaching cycles that they are using with their teachers. Using intervention programs purposefully and appropriately. This has been a huge push both from last year and especially this year. We did an extensive training just last week with our principals. They told us it was a little bit like drinking out of a fire hose, because the amount of resources that we have been able to develop over the course of the summer and provide to them in this area is now coming to the classrooms, both in our early grades and especially towards our later grades, which we'll talk about in our other goals. And so the beginning of using those programs, but that will be a continual focus for us for the remainder of the year. It's not just a one shot. We'll be continually coming back to those with our principal leaderships, teams, and capacity building. And finally, collaboration and data analysis to improve instruction through the use of those CTMs. And again, those collaborative team meetings. This has been a huge point of pride, especially for Principal Ramos. She is finally using the data, and her teachers are seeing the need of using that data and how to plan for instruction. They're doing it outside the contractual day. They are really making the time to be intentional and collaborate with each other in those vertical teams. Again, Lowell's one of those campuses where it's really only one teacher per grade level. So we got to keep that in consideration as well. It's one of our smaller campuses. So is Emerson. And so we really want to make sure those campuses, they don't necessarily have a colleague that they are collaborating with across it. The data you're seeing is the result of what's going on perhaps in one classroom. And so we want to make sure that they're having the opportunity to collaborate across second grade, collaborating with third grade collaborating with fourth grade, so on and so forth. And they've made intensive progress in that area of getting the teachers to understand the value of that collaboration. So those were all areas of success right now for those leaders that they're going to be eager to speak to in the spring when we see some more of this data on the school. And I'm going to turn over to Dr. Galetti to talk a little bit about the things that we're focusing on based on the feedback and based on our observations.
Thank you. So some of the things that we've identified in response to some of what Dr. Ailshire has outlined, some of the things we're doing currently, and he mentioned the coaching piece and how we've revamped the coaching role. So we had master teachers last year. This year, what we have are we've revised the role to be instructional coaches, and we've done some extensive training to support them in not only their coaching practices, meaning the way that they're working with teachers, the way they're helping them plan, the way they're working with them during CTMs, the way they're working with them to understand the data that their students are generating. But we're really having them work with the teachers directly and with the leaders at the sites and with one another as well. So even going back to the training on the interventions, for example, that we had talked to, that Dr. Ailshire mentioned that we'd done a fire hose type of a training with our leaders last week. Yesterday, as an example, we were able to bring in those coaches to provide them a deeper level of training on the data analysis piece and how to connect the student needs directly with particular resources that they can use for their small groups that Dr. Gonzalez had mentioned, and to really meet those exact needs that students might have. So the coaching and the professional development piece has been really important for us in helping to also just increase their understanding of math and how to teach math. Susan Brown, our district math coach, has done some work with them. In fact, she's pulling a group next week to do during fall break to do a math boot camp to really work on planning and lesson design. So really helping them to understand not just their curricular resource, but how to plan with that, aligned to the grade level standards and in support of all of our students. I should also mention with our coaching, the other piece that's been really, really wonderful is when we talk about the access for all learners, which is at the bottom, that last bullet point there, and also in the coaching piece, our ESS department, led by Alicia Zelvis, we have coaches. She is a coach there who's also been learning and working alongside all of our coaches so that we are really truly using consistent curriculum resources and using those appropriately to meet the variety of needs that our students have. So we've been really working to be more intentional about ensuring that all of our teachers have access to the curriculum materials and they all understand the data to be selective about the pieces that they're using and how they're using those with the students. The other piece on here is in that third bullet, using the student data to plan for the scaffolding and the vocabulary development. What we know is that in addition to that small group instruction, we need to also understand the student data. Our teachers need to understand that student data so that they can help our students to learn those concepts while they're receiving their instruction. So clarifying vocabulary words for our students, for example, that's going to be something we've been working really closely with our English language development program here within the district to ensure that we have consistent vocabulary routines. So whether it's in math, whether it's in English, whether it's in social studies or any content across the school day, that our teachers are trained in how do you introduce vocabulary so that they understand and they're used to that process. So we're using some really solid research there and working with Mary Lou and her team to support that as well. So those are some of the things that we're doing currently to support math instruction at these younger grade levels.
May we ask a few questions? I'm gonna jump in and go first. One of the things that comes to mind for second grade is as far as the engagement part, the discussion, I just think back to, I know things are very different than when I went to school, but like getting out of that culture of you got to be quiet and listen to the teacher and not talk. So I just wonder like what the engagement pieces look like when we're trying to get our kids to have, our students to have those discussions and participate and engage. So I was wondering if you could touch a little bit on what that looks like.
Absolutely. That's a really great question and something that we are also working toward. I think it mentioned the student discussion piece in there specifically. So our teachers are utilizing, it's called a try, discuss, connect routine when they're engaging in that math instruction, which means that they're giving a little bit of time after their initial instruction to have students try. During that time, they're walking around and they're kind of seeing and doing a little bit of informal assessment of where students may be struggling, where they may be needing a little bit more support. And so that's just about 5 minutes. So they're trying it to see, so this teacher has a better understanding of what that is. Then they're discussing. So that, and well, I should say after that trying piece, that might identify some things where the teacher might want to go back and clarify and support a little bit and then let them try a little bit more. But then they have that discussion piece. And so that's where the students are really engaged in discussing about math. How did you do this? How did I do this? Where are we? How are you getting that? How am I getting that? So there's this whole discussion piece where they're really encouraged, and that goes back to that vocabulary use, making sure that they really understand the math vocabulary so that they can use that in their discussions with one another. So the discussion piece is really, really important in math. Sometimes we don't think about it being so important. We think it's just numbers, but there's so much vocabulary with math and we know that there's so many word problems that we want to make sure that our students understand what the problems are asking so that they can engage in that and have those discussions. So discussion in the math class is something that is part of the regular math routine across all of our grade levels, K through 8.
Another question that pops up, and if this has to come later in a board update, I completely understand. You mentioned the collaboration, the data analysis, and time taken to focus on a student's exact needs. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more as far as what that part looks like? That's it. Thank you.
Yes, we can do a board update. I can elaborate briefly just to give you kind of because it is a process, but essentially looking at their iReady data, making sure that they understand that, looking at the assessments that they're giving from their math instruction and understand and see how those work together to help meet those needs.
Okay, when that was mentioned, my mind went to like tutoring and those kind of like different other needs. So, and I know I didn't send my questions in early enough, so that's the only reason I
And we can
mentioned
send some
board
scenario
update.
examples for all the board members to understand some of the examples of what that would look like. in a
Only if it's
classroom.
helpful. I just wanted to be considerate that like if we don't have the information here, that I completely own my responsibility in not sending my question in earlier. Thank you.
We're all educators and we can talk about this forever. So we want to be cognizant of everyone's time.
I have a question. I'm seeing right here on interim goal 2.1, it was at 2%, 4%, 5%, and then there's this expectation that we're supposed to jump to 20%. Is that a realistic goal? And why did you come up with that?
Great question. So one thing to notice, the 2, 4, and 5% are from our fall benchmarks. So it's kind of help you see what our starting point has been the last several years. I ran the numbers. On average, over the last 3 years, we've gone up from the fall to the winter 13%. So the 15% was meant to help these schools grow a little closer to the district average or be higher than the district average in terms of their overall percent of students on. And so we do think this is feasible, especially these schools where we are trying to dedicate additional resources. And again, I think because of their size, really we're influencing, 1 or 2 students more at their school in a way to be able to meet beyond grade than some of the other schools, and that will show that little bit of an extra difference of improvement, above that 13% that's been the average improvement from fall to winter. So I that's why that is a feasible target for them.
Thank you. That was a great answer and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I have a question. And I will preface it as well, is that this might be something that, maybe is gonna take some more information to be compiled. But one of the things that I'm thinking about when I look at this is, I was thinking, somebody mentioned the dual language immersion before that is at a location, and I'm not 100% sure about how that works, but that was sort of my conceptual idea, as far as you have a school where you're focusing on one subject to really create an immersive experience. And I have personally benefited from that many times in my life. So I know how important that is. Like when you need to learn a large quantity of information fast, it's a very different experience than just kind of, every day, 40 minutes learning. But when this was something that hadn't like gone into the analysis in my head about it, but when it's a school that's also a classroom of 44 and you're looking at concrete subject areas like this with math, is it happening where maybe math specialists are coming in to try to create that immersive environment to, basically specialize in that sense, rather than, one teacher covering a lot of subjects is a gift, but math is also it's a very particular subject. And the idea of like bringing somebody into the classroom who truly just has that gift to kind of, shake things up.
So I do think that in the dual language model, there is a portion of the day that is taught in Spanish, another portion of the day that's taught in English to create that immersion experience. But the teachers who are teaching the content are being trained in the specific content knowledge, regardless of the language used. What's nice is that in the dual language model, there's a lot of cognates that are used. So looking at words that have similar structures, similar sounds that mean the same thing in both languages. And mathematics is one of those areas where that really helps to strengthen the understanding. The vocabulary instruction is really critical. And so especially in the early years, a lot of the instruction that's occurring is teaching students the vocabulary. And when we go back to the discuss it or try it, discuss it, solve it, getting the kids to talk about it in either language so that they're able to use that vocabulary, apply that vocabulary. And in the early grades, it's even making models, like drawing the dots or making grids and showing those things. It's that skill set of building the concrete understanding of the math concept that they can then apply in a novel situation. And so the math teachers we do have math experts, Mrs. Brown, who had to leave earlier, she is our STEM specialist. She has a passion for mathematics and for science. And she goes in and she actually works with the teachers and helps to provide that. We've also got teams of teachers across the district who are coming together to strengthen their math knowledge and understanding how we can apply it in middle years specifically. So there are lots of different strategies that we're employing to try to understand how we help both of these schools understand how to firm up that basic math concept. And the dual language model has just started this year. So we've seen from the prior years that lower start. We believe next year we'll see a higher start.
I'd like to ask for a clarifying question, just so I understand. So fall data is more like our iReady, things like that, and then our winter benchmarks are different. I just want to understand the difference between having fall 24, 25 on here and then what our
Yeah,
our
sorry.
winter data. Sorry. Just want to understand both of those.
Yeah. So the benchmarks that we give in math throughout the year are all from iReady. And we've used it for, I think this is our 5th or 6th year actually, because we started using it when I started. So happy 6th anniversary to me. And so yeah, we've used it for math, and we use it in the fall and the winter, and in the spring. What we've moved to for the spring, because most of our grades are taking like a state assessment in the spring in math already, we've made it an optional for schools that want to also do the iReady in the spring. They can do it then. So for fall and winter every year, we're using the iReady diagnostic as our benchmarking tool.
May I understand the months that are fall and winter? Is that
Yeah.
like-
So fall is usually beginning of the year. It's usually within the first 3 weeks of school. This year we did it in it was August 10th, second week, I think. Yeah. Second full week. And then we will do it again in the second week of December. And iReady recommends at least a 14-week instructional period in between. So we make sure that we follow that guidance.
Thank you for the added clarity. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
My last question would be what can we expect as far as the next 10 months to our target goals? Like may we have a few examples of what we expect to see maybe? Or just more, I just want to fully understand if we're going to see anything different that might be happening, or just more of the same things that we're noticing are working, like the collaborative team meetings, all that data analysis. Just, I guess I want to understand where we're starting at and where we're planning to be to hit our target.
So I'll let Dr. Ailshire jump in as well if he'd like, but I think he mentioned at the beginning when he was speaking about the work that we're doing around really supporting tier 2 and that intervention time during the day. That is going to be something that we've put more focus on that, and it will continue to be a strong focus for us so that we are both providing that strong tier 1 instruction, which is what everybody gets, but also supplementing that with additional math instruction to support those individualized student needs. So helping our teachers, our coaches, everyone who's working on a school campus to really understand that is going to be something we'll continue to be building over the course of the year.
Beautiful. So Dr. Glady, and the only thing I'll add to that is just really building the capacity of those teachers. As I noted in the 2 focus schools, but in general, those 2 focus schools, it's 1 or 2 teachers at that grade level. And so as we emphasize the 2 different inputs that have had the greatest impact that we're beginning to see is the coaching models, which again, that is a new model for this year. And then the fact that in both of these cases, the leaders have really gained momentum in having the teachers meet in their collaborative team meetings, and beginning now to have those vertical team meetings where they're actually analyzing the data and then using the data, not just for the tier 2. Really want to emphasize tier 2 is great, but unless we are doing things every day in the classroom with all of the kids, and that goes back to the scaffolding, making sure our students are able to access the grade level content, making sure our ESS students, our EL students have access to the content, and the expectation of every teacher needs to be all kids can access the grade level content. We just have to provide the scaffolds and the art of teaching to make sure they do that. That is a guiding light for our department. And we want to make sure that's going to be something that we're going to be really emphasizing through the coaching models, through the professional development, and through the CTMs. And I believe that will see additional impact.
as far as impact goes for our students, I would like to understand a little clearer how that does impact our students. Like what would we see once that starts? I guess in the classroom, like what does that look like?
As students develop their confidence and their understanding, you see more risk-taking in terms of trying problems on their own before they say, I can't, teacher, will you come help me? So what you start to see is that as students are starting to understand it and they're getting all of these experiences, that they're actually trying it and in seeing success, and that success continues to feed that positive sense of, I can do this, I know how to do this. You also see students identifying when they don't understand something and asking a question and understanding how to ask the question so that they can get the help. So what's important in all of this is that in terms of what it looks like, we want our students to become independent learners, but they have to start by depending on people to help them learn. And that's depending on their teachers, depending on thedon't classmates, and understanding when they don't have the knowledge or they're not getting it, to raise their hand and say, can you help me with, I don't know why this 2 is here. And now let's take a look. Why is that 2 here? What did you do here? And just getting them to that process of understanding. So in terms of what the impact of these coaches, the stronger the teacher is in the classroom, the stronger the teacher is to create those environments where students can do that.
And that leads us to the student discussions and that engagement and those
Yeah.
conversations, the reciprocity. Okay. That's what this feels like. Thank you very much. Are there any further questions? Right, hearing none, I move that we approve our progress monitoring report for board goal number 2. Do we have a second?
This is Erica and I second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye, sorry.
Hi.
All opposed say no. Hearing none, our motion passes, and we will move on to item G4, receive, discuss, and consider approval of our monitoring report for board goal number 5.
Madam President, this is our middle year's math goal. This is a goal set for 8th graders, members of the board. This is the percentage of 8th grade students with a pass rate on the AASA. They were at 13% in 2023, and our goal is to get them to 2028 our goal is to get them to 38% by 2028. It's been a long day. The percentage of 8th grade, so on the next page, we're looking at where we've gone, and you can see this is a group where we really have struggled. And our data is not consistently going up. It's not consistently going down. It's really a mixed bag here. And so again, we're focusing on trying to get our 8th grade students to have a better understanding of math concepts. And honestly, this is particularly where having a strong math teacher who has the math background is critically important for us. And unfortunately, we just don't get a lot of people going into mathematics as a profession to teach elementary school, because many graduates, in fact, I was at a university recruitment event one time, and the person said, any of you who are taking math, you can get tons of jobs anywhere you want, and you're going to make a ton of money. And I had to say, but if you wanted to teach in a school, you can get tons of rewards from knowing that you're making a difference in the lives of children. Unfortunately, we didn't get any math teachers from that conference, but that is an issue that we have in terms of thinking about the fact that we need people who are skilled at mathematics and skilled at working with middle school students teaching this. So one of the nice things that we're starting to see is that when you look at the plans for focus, ensuring that all students have access to grade level content, that is really important. And in our iReady curriculum, our teachers, it's taken a long time for them to really adopt it and embrace it, but they're starting to use it. And more importantly, they're starting to use the tools that help them differentiate. So when you think about that idea of doing scaffolding and targeted instruction, about everyone's getting grade level content, but some students are getting a little extra support with this. Some students are ready to push into higher level understandings with this. The data that they're able to use from the program is starting to help the teachers better differentiate for their students. So that's something that is showing promise right now, but it's something we have to continue to focus on. And then in the other plan for focus is developing our teachers through coaching and professional learning. I spoke earlier about the group of middle school math teachers who are coming together and doing lesson studies. So really breaking down what are the components of the lesson? What is the student going to know and be able to do when they're done? What questions do I need to ask to see if they're actually getting it? What are the experiences my students need to get to be able to demonstrate that they are in fact getting it? So it's a really robust process in terms of how I present the material, the questioning that I use, and how am I assessing and monitoring when students don't get it. And so we've got teachers who have devoted their time, as Dr. Ailshire said earlier, off the clock. They're doing this outside of their regular school day, working together to kind of unlock what do we need to do differently to get more of our students to succeed. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Lloyd.
Thank you. Good to see you again. So here we're talking about interim goal 5.1 on the next slide. And this is our cohort of year 2028, which means this year they are sixth graders. And our focus schools are Capital and Herrera. So we started in 23-24, 17% were on grade level in the winter. And by this year, we're supposed to have 26% of those students in the same cohort on grade level by winter. So you can see in our line graph, comparing the falls, we are 3% better. We've been 3% better each year, and we're in our starting point. And to hit our target for this year, we'd have to go up by 14% from that 13 to 27. Now, Member Ovai's question from our last report, is that feasible? Is that a good target? Well, this target, just so you know, Member Ovai, was set 2 years ago. So at this point, it isn't feasible, most likely. Not to say that it's completely out of the question, but on average, we've only gone up 8% from fall to winter in our sixth grade over the last 3 years. So it is outside of that range. And so we don't expect to be able to hit it at least at both sites this year, but we're going to do our darndest. So I just want to bring that up front. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see I do think a feasible target for them is 10%, a 10% improvement from fall to winter for those schools, especially with extra resources and that special focus. And so you'll see their targets are to go in the fall at Capital from 13% to 23%, and from Herrera from 13% to 23%. So they're not super far off what our target is, but that's with a 10% increase. And so we will, like I said, we'll do our best to hit that target. And there is good news there, right? In terms of our students, like at Herrera, for example, that cohort in 24-25, when they're in fifth grade, only 6% were on grade when they started the year. And this year as sixth graders, 13% are on grade. So that's more than double the number of students who are on grade this fall starting. And Capital went up slightly too, from 12% to 13%. That is good news for our starting point and where we're trying to move our students with their math. You can go to the next, Randy. The interim goal 5.2 is seventh grade students. This is cohort 2027. again at Capitol and Herrera. You can see our line is stagnated, well, dropped and then stagnated, right? So we were at 11% on grade level in the fall when they were in 5th grade. And then last year as 6th graders, there's 8%. And now as 7th graders, there's 8% on grade level. And again, the target that we set 2 years ago now is out of reach to be over 24%. We do, to give you some context, on average, our 7th graders over the last 3 years have improved 7% on grade. So going from 8 to 15% would be normal or typical. And we're trying to get to a 25% target. So it is out of reach. It's not impossible, but I'm going to project that we will come in below that this year. You can go to the next, Randy. Thanks. Again, we have some good news in terms of our starting point for Capitol. Their percent of students doubled, just like Herrera did in with the 6th graders. Capitol's has doubled their starting point from 6% to 13% on grade on the fall benchmark. So that is good news. And with a 10% increase, they're really close to that 20, more than 24%. Herrera, however, has stagnated and stayed 4%, last year and 4% this year. So we would expect them to get to around 14, 15%. And so that is why we wouldn't be able to hit that target for this year. We'll go to the next. I'll turn it back over to my fellow chairs.
Thank you, Dr. Lloyd. To talk about what is working, I want to kind of give you guys a non-example. I want to provide you with a sort of an image of what it would look like walking into a middle school classroom 2 years ago. You walk into a middle school classroom 2 years ago, you have a teacher who is doing their best. They are not necessarily a math certified teacher, as you point out. And they're in a room with students who on average are 3 years below grade level or more in math. That teacher looks at their students and believes these students can't access the curriculum that the district gave me because that's an 8th grade curriculum. So I'm going to find something different that these kids maybe should be able to access. And so now what we are doing is instead of teaching the grade level content that the students need, because that's what they're going to be assessed at the end, the teacher is going out for other resources and doing what we call remediation. They're teaching 5th grade concepts, 3rd grade concepts, because they believe that's what their 8th grade students can master and feel good about. That would not be uncommon to see walking into a middle school classroom in many places in the United States. And it was certainly a place that we were at about 2 years ago. So when we talk about what is working really well, it's changing that dynamic. So now what we see when we walk into classrooms is teachers are not using those teacher pay teacher resources. They are picking up the actual curriculum that is a research adopted curriculum and working to provide that grade level access to all the students in the classroom. They are looking at ways in which they are working with a coach or a support person who is showing them how they can scaffold or provide supports in their daily teaching that the students, yes, they need those basic, foundational skills that they might have missed in 5th grade, but there's ways to, this is the art of teaching that we like to talk about, a way to provide the grade level content in a scaffolded way that the students can still access it without just teaching we're just going to be talking about multiplication, right? We want to make sure that they're still doing it. So providing the scaffolding, but you're going to need a coach. You're going to need somebody to show you how to do those things because otherwise I'm a Teach for America, or I majored, this is my 2nd career as a teacher. I'm not a mathematician, as we talked about. And so having that coach is something that we find to be extremely effective because it's supporting that teacher in how to do daily instruction in a meaningful way so that the kids can access the curriculum that we know will be effective in them accessing the grade level content. So it's a very different type of image of what we were walking into 2 years ago, where the kids were not getting the curriculum because the teachers did not believe they could access it. And the teachers didn't know how to provide the curriculum every day so the kids could. Now we have coaches that are in the classroom that are supporting the teachers in doing that. The teachers are beginning to now get experience using the curriculum. And so now they're actually using the curriculum, and the students are now finally being exposed to the 8th grade content in a scaffolded way. So, So that kind of gives an idea of what we mean by what is working well. And I just want to kind of provide that image of where we were just 2 years ago in the math middle school, that visual image of what you'd walk into versus what you're seeing in some of those classrooms now. That doesn't mean we're where we need to be. Obviously, the data shows that. And so Dr. Galletti is going to kind of outline how we now build upon those strengths. Just because they're picking up the curriculum, right? And that doesn't mean that they're planning with it. It doesn't mean that they are versed in it as well as they can be. And that's the role of our department.
And to what you had mentioned earlier as well, in addition, using some of those grant funds that we heard about earlier from the 21st Century Grant to help support some of those outside of the school day, the tutoring and those additional supports, that's also happening. But one thing and that has already been mentioned is we need to recruit more secondary teachers with that math experience, with the math endorsements at our middle grades. The coaching has been very, very helpful to our teachers. What that looks like is they are helping them with planning. Also, it might look like they're co-teaching with them on occasion or modeling what a lesson might look like so that they could see how that should or how that might look within a classroom with students, so that they're not left to their own to figure it out, but they have someone alongside to kind of help them out and support them with the curriculum and with supporting their students. Also, just understanding and planning effective lessons. So Dr. Gonzalez mentioned the lesson study team. We have a middle school math task force we have teachers that are very involved and leaders as well that are involved, and they've come up with that on their own. This idea of bringing teachers together to plan together and to collaborate and really study the math so that they understand how to best teach and support their students with it. Ensuring that all of the students are provided the effective math interventions. We were talking about that earlier based on data. Our coaches and our leaders are also helping to support that. And then finally, providing that targeted professional development for our middle school math educators in math instruction and planning. So Mrs. Brown, Susan Brown, our district math coach is bringing together our middle school math educators multiple times throughout this year to support them with not only the planning and the use of the curriculum, but she's also infusing within that some of the things that we had discussed earlier, such as those vocabulary routines, how to help support students in engaging in those discussions about math, how to support or help students understand the concepts of math at the upper grade levels by using manipulatives or different strategies that might be needed for various students. And so professional development for our math educators at those middle grades is something else that we are really working to provide targeted support around.
And if I could, I provided a very bad example when I was talking about our partners at TFA. Those are actually pretty much sometimes the only math experienced teachers that we have put in the classroom. They come from math backgrounds. Dr. Bowman is very specific in making sure that it happens. It is one of his professional goals to make sure we have highly certified teachers in our classroom. So that was a bad example on my part. They are oftentimes some of the best qualified individuals to go in those classrooms.
Thank you for the clarification, but it went really well with where we were back 2 years ago and where we are now. So I really appreciate the breakdown and the vision. It helps put things in order. So I appreciate the example nonetheless. Hearing no further discussion, my heart is with our middle schoolers. I remember how hard it could be to be a middle schooler. So I don't take any of this lightly, and I really can see how much hard work is going into this. So I really appreciate you sharing the information. But with that, if there are no further questions, I would like to move that we approve our progress monitoring report for board goal number 5. Do we have a second?
This is Erica and I second.
Thank you kindly. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. With that, our motion passes and we will move on to item G5. Receive, discuss, and consider approval of our progress monitoring report for Superintendent Guardrail number 2.
This evening, Superintendent Guardrail number 2 is the guardrail that the superintendent shall not allow the district to operate without a human organizational customer service plan to foster trust and collaboration. And on the next slide, you'll see we've broken this down into 3 different sections. Each of these is an interim goal that we're working toward, and this year we'll be able to measure this. Guardrail number 1 is our interim guardrail number 2.1 is a goal to enhance a culture of customer care. And one of the things that we're doing with that is really trying to emphasize the importance of taking careful record keeping of enrollment and attendance, because what we continue to see is that these are audit findings that cause us to lose money. And it also is not giving the care and attention that we need to make sure that we have students getting what they need based on where they are. So this is important information for us to gather. We've started a process that I'll outline in a little bit, but our goal is that we're going to decrease the number of audit errors annually by 5%, going from the baseline that was established last year of 60% audit errors. Interim goal 2.2, by May of 2026, we want to enhance that culture of customer care and systems efficiency, but this is more about how we are interacting with our families. And so one of the things that we've added this year is the QR code in the offices, so that families, after they have an interaction, they can click the QR code and let us know how they're doing. We are also using surveys with our family members during the caregiver conferences, so that when they come to conferences, they can leave and give us a quarterly rating in terms of how they think things are going for themselves and for their children. So again, we're getting regular feedback at intervals throughout the year to help us know, are we getting stronger and what can we do differently? And then interim guardrail 2.3 is that we will have our family and community engagement specialists who will begin to work with us on the academic engagement portion, helping our families and our caregivers to be partners in strengthening the academics at home. So if we look at the next slide, interim guardrail 2.1, this actually breaks us down, and here's the internal audit system. So in our training with our front office staff, we've been working on helping them understand very specifically the types of errors that we're finding in our audit feedback. And these are the highest miscues that we make when we're working with attendance and withdrawals and with enrollments. Proof of residency. So what happens is our internal MIS team is pulling random records at all of the schools in September, January, and April to check how many records that we pull have this error in them. The other errors that we look at are home language surveys. These are the surveys that families have to fill out, identifying what the language at home that is spoken by the families. Withdrawal forms, there are specific criteria we have to look at when students are withdrawing from the school. Then we are also needing to check attendance minutes. If I arrive 10 minutes late versus 45 minutes late, I have to have it coded differently. And then absences, am I absent the whole day, or am I absent only half the day? So this table shows how we're going to do these internal audits. What happens with the internal audits then, the front office staff get immediate feedback to say, here are the records that we pulled. Great job. You only had one error in all of the records that we checked. Here's the error that we found. Please make sure that this is corrected, and this is how you correct it. Or they get, here are the records that we found. Here are the mistakes that were found. We're going to come over and work with you to help correct these, or here are the directions for how to correct these. Please correct these, and we'll get back to getting a higher return on these. So we are working to go from 75% of these kinds of errors in this checking to only having, we're going to reduce it by 15%. Did I say that backwards, Erin? We're going to reduce it to 15%, not from. On the next part of this, this is helping us not only monitor and track our school performance with frequency of audit errors, it's also helping us understand from the perspective of the front office staff and principals, are the office staff being supported to be able to complete these tasks? Have they been set up for something that's not really realistic? And then how do we help to provide better training, provide better support, and allocate the time that's necessary for them to make sure that they're not making these errors? Because what happens when you're constantly having to go back and backtrack, you're not able to pay attention when somebody comes to the front window to talk to you. But we do want to celebrate those staff that are reaching the accuracy goal of 75% without having errors. And we also want to plan to reduce errors for staff that are not reaching that so that we can continue to work with them and their principals to get the support to erase those errors and keep us from losing those funds. Interim goal, guardrail 2.2 is the customer efficiency. And this is the one that we talked about a little bit earlier. We're adding the quarterly surveys that are administered at the reporting periods. These are the questions that are asked on here. It's how would you rate your interactions with the school? Please tell us why you rated it as you did. How would you rate your interactions with the district? Please tell us why you rated as you did. And what ideas or suggestions would you like to offer to improve education in our district? These are open-ended questions coupled with Likert scale questions, meaning there's a range that they use to rate this. And then the other tool that we're using to gather this information is through the roundtable surveys that I was talking about, going to schools and doing roundtables. And it truly is just tell us what is going well, what are things you would like to see changed, how can we better support you? And then we've got the front office checks that are posted across the district and in the district office as well. And these data are being reviewed monthly. So here's an example from the interim guardrail 2.2, the roundtables that we've had thus far. Roundtable at Lowell, we had 8 families total who attended, and some of the things that came out of that roundtable. There was an issue around safe communities when they just mentioned that the children are having to communicate or to commute to school through some really dangerous terrain at times. And there are a lot of social service agencies that are serving unhoused people, people with drug addictions, and students are having to encounter that on the way. Another thing that came up was the need to have more social workers or school safety officers at the school to help mitigate that impact when students are coming. They love music and arts classes and want to make sure that students are continuing to get those. They also want more after-school enrichment. And so Lowell, for example, has the Tiger Club, and they were waiting for Tiger Club to get started. And so they were very excited when they found out it was starting the very next week. And then another that came out of this was training for parents on working with middle school students. And you're going to see this came up also at the Cafecito at Herrera. So at the Indian Parent Advisory Committee, their roundtable, some of the common comments were more programs around STEM and enrichments. And this goes back to Sue Ann's comment earlier, making sure that as we're talking about programs, we're investing in putting those programs in place. And then an honest teaching about history, the Cafecito at Herrera, and the numbers in parentheses are the numbers of families who attended. They feel like there's better food now, but they want larger portions for middle school. They want sports programs after school and something more than the competitive. They were disappointed that if you didn't make a competitive sport, there wasn't something for you. And then training for parents on working with middle school students. And at Herrera, they were specifically worried about talking to students about drug use and getting mixed up with the wrong crowd. And then the PTA at Faith North, they had 85 families there. Security was an issue for those families, as well as transportation. They were hoping they could get more transportation and longer preschool days. So interim guardrail 2.2, we also asked, what are the reasons that you attend? And some of the feedback, the most common was, I have a child who's currently enrolled in Phoenix #1. That's the reason I attended this meeting. Other frequent reasons were that they wanted to learn more about Phoenix #1. They were considering enrollment. They wanted to share experiences and opportunities for students and families, and that they like supporting local education. These are the top school choice factors are in the order of importance. School safety was one of the highest factors that they rated in terms of why they choose the school. Engaging programs, knowledgeable and caring teachers, academic excellence in school rating, a positive school culture, after-school enrichment, the quality of meal programs, location, and transportation items. Those were all at the very bottom. And then suggestions for improving the enrollment process. Many reported absolutely no issues. One person said, nothing, it's easy and fast. Another said, it has been easy for me. Some noted that they felt that teachers needed more support and for children, that we needed to have more supports for children and for teachers. So on interim guardrail 2.3, this is the one that is about our family engagement and working specifically with our family and community engagement specialists to have our family members trained. So we've got a parent educator academy that's coming up very, very soon. We have our family and community engagement specialists and a caregiver, 18 total who are signing up. We have a spring cohort and a fall cohort. They go for 3 hours twice a week or once a week, 3 hours once a week for 12 weeks. And they're working on strategies that are tied directly back to literacy. So the things that we've been talking about in terms of vocabulary, in terms of questioning, those are the strategies that the families are working on. And then the New Teacher Project is one of our partnerships that's been working with our teachers and developing the understanding of how to teach with consistency and coherence and creating classrooms where everyone feels they belong. They have a component in their work for caregivers. And so after working with them for a little bit, we said we'd love to go ahead and add this now rather than wait. So they are also working with us so that our family and community engagement specialists are going through components of the training beside the teachers, and families are as well. And so the FACES will be able to support families and have these special workshops designed for the parents. And they'll be put on by our FACES. And that takes us to the end of the monitoring of Superintendent Guardrail number 2.
Thank you for all of that information, Dr. Gonzalez. Do we have any questions?
I do. Who runs the internal audit when it comes to the front office stuff?
MIS pulls records randomly. We use the same process that the ADE and the audit companies use. So what they do is they go in and they just randomly pull so many files, and then they look at those files to make sure that they are correct.
But that's done internally. We're not hiring somebody.
No, we're doing
Okay,
it
good.
internally. It will be done, though. I want to be clear about this. We're doing it internally to catch errors first so that we can make corrections and teach proper processes. But when we're audited, ADE and our auditors will do that process externally.
Another question I ask, and I ask it all the time, is like, I'm super confused why this is a guardrail and why these aren't written into like someone's job description. And then I guess that leads me to if it's an internal audit. Well, you said explain that, because I'm worried that if it's an internal audit, how do we know that it's accurate? But you're saying it's done electronically or something?
No, our MIS team is responsible for ensuring the accuracy of all of our records. They depend on the front office staff to put the records in correctly. There hasn't always been a system to check it other than waiting until an auditor from outside comes to do it. So we've started putting in the internal audit to make sure that it's happening correctly. And why this is a guardrail? Because it was a need that was identified.
Yeah, I've been thinking, I mean, you've heard me talk about that quite a bit because I definitely don't think it should be a guardrail. But yeah, those were my questions. Again, I think it should be it should be part of a job description. People should be doing that on their own. And, you know, again, the accuracy is kind of like where I'm at, but I think that's it for now.
I'm glad you raised that point. It's telling now at this part of the, I don't know, at this level, at this section of, like from where we started to where we're at now, we are finding it's helping us put processes in place so that we don't lose funding when we're not logging attendance correctly, when we're not doing certain things. So without this guardrail, we wouldn't have found these, I don't think. But you're right, I think we are at a point where we can make some changes to these. But I do appreciate where we started and where we're coming from. But back from the data that we got in 2022 and 23, it was put in place because there were problems like going to front offices where staff weren't very welcoming or didn't really take time to help parents through certain in either enrollment processes or just connecting really with the community. So I feel like it's been a long time coming, but we've made a lot of progress, and I can even tell a difference when I visit schools now, the difference in the interaction. And not to say it was bad, it just wasn't, it was kind of non-existent. Like you literally waited until somebody stopped what they were doing to come acknowledge you. And now it's like we have protocols in place where we're greeted. You're logged in, you get to visit, like there's just a lot more engagement and there didn't used to be.
Yeah, I just feel like it's a lot of hand holding, like where we have to hold their hands to make sure that they're being accurate and checking attendance and stuff like that, where we could be prioritizing other things. But I do want to say that I do appreciate that we do have some community feedback and seeing what it is that people need and want. Like that is my biggest thing that I love. And so seeing it in there, you know, I see that, you know, we're getting some numbers up there and they're coming and they're, because all the feedback on the things that we're doing, it needs to be led by them and then them putting their perspective on the things that they want. That is so important to me. So good job on getting all that information on that. So thank you.
Any further questions? All right, hearing none, I move that we approve our progress monitoring report for Superintendent Guardrail number 2. Do we have a second?
This is Erica and I second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say no. Hearing none, the motion passes and we will move on to item G6 regarding board self guardrail number 2. This guardrail is in place to ensure that the board is focusing. We have allotted time to focus on our student achievement. So we do have, I believe it was printed out. We have our time use evaluation, and the most recent one we have calculated for meetings is from August 14th meeting and then our study session that we had in August. So that's where a lot of our minutes went. So we're not hitting our target of at least 50%. We were only hit 2% with 9 minutes this go around. So we're working on it. September's meeting minutes will be included in the next time we look at this guardrail. And And this meeting, we've got some minutes allotted to our student achievement goals. So that number will increase. But this guardrail is in place again, just to make sure that we are focusing on student achievement and we prioritize that, and don't get distracted by other things where we spend all of our time focusing on finances and things like that, which are equally as important, but we've just got to balance it out. So with that, are there any questions regarding the time use evaluation?
Yeah, actually, I just saw this from before. I didn't see it before the meeting, but I feel like these numbers are low, like really low. And obviously I didn't calculate it, but I'd be interested in seeing a little bit more about that because the 2 meetings I've been here for, I feel like we've spent definitely more than 2% of the time on this, but I could be wrong.
Agreed. And so our governance coach helps us monitor these. And so it is, I would like to get to the point where one of us is able to calculate all these minutes, but I think that's a great question. So we will get together and spend some time on that. So I appreciate the reach out. I will, I guess, work to connect with you to make some time to do that with our coach. I think wouldn't take us too much time. So I'll reach out to connect us regarding that. Any further questions on the tool? Okay, with that, we'll move on to our final, well, almost final item, H1, our future agenda items. Do we have any future agenda items this evening from the board? Hearing none, I will move on to item I1, adjournment and move that we adjourn at 8:10 PM. Do we have a second?
This is Erica and I second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Hearing that, our motion passes and we will adjourn at 8:10 PM. Our next meeting is November the 13th here in the governing board room. Thank you to all who participated online and in person this evening. We'll see you next month.